I'm so excited that we're having our first ever session of Brains of GTM. And like I said, it's so good to see so many of you here. If we haven't met before, I'm Martha, and I'm the content marketing manager here at UserGems. Now, the whole idea behind this series came from a feeling that I think a lot of us probably do share right now, and there's so much content out there about signals, ABM, AI, and also GTM orchestration. And Brains of GTM, we really want to kind of move past that theoretical and get stuck into the practical. So today and in this series, we'll be putting the mic in front of people who are actually running the plays, and hopefully we're going to be learning directly from them. And we'll find out kind of what they've built, how they build it, and maybe even what they'll do differently next time. So I think today we've completely delivered on that, because these two guests are genuinely great people to learn from. And they're going to be telling us exactly how they built their smarter GTM brain. And what I mean by that is that every revenue team today has these two systems. So they have that system of record, so CRMs, Salesforce, HubSpot, and then we've got that system of action, so your engagement and marketing automation tools. Now, both of these are really powerful, but neither actually know what's happening right now or what should happen next. And that's where that brain comes in. It's that missing layer between these two systems that truly understands your business. And it's these two systems that our speakers today are going to be sharing with us. So we've got Mark Kosoglow, who joined Docebo as CRO and had a working GTM brain up and running within his first quarter with UserGems. And I know their first opportunity landed within 4 days, and their 11 to 16 reply rates followed very shortly after. So today he's going to be telling us all about how that all came together. And then next we have Kevin Driscoll, who runs Global ABM at Datadog. And their team, they're now booking 25 plus meetings a week with Fortune 500 companies, and he built the whole engine himself. So I know he's been talking today at Demand Day Summit and Demand Collective today, so this should be an interesting one. But of course, these are two very different builds, but they both have that same outcome. So more pipeline with the same team. So we're going to get stuck into everything today, but please do keep your questions coming in as the chat or the Q&A section as we go. We'll save plenty of time at the end to kind of get through as many of these as we can. Kevin and Mark, I'm so happy to have you both. Let's get into it. And Mark, we'll be starting with you. So I'll get those slides up ready for you. Here we go.
All right, y'all. So let's talk a little bit about some, we call our org, the SDR, BDR, ADR, there's a million XDRs. We call them business development reps here, so BDRs. And what we wanted to do was solve a problem. When I got in here, we have a very good functioning BDR function. If you want to go to the next slide, Martha. It was built on a bunch of reps and managers doing an ungodly amount of hard and awesome work to deliver really above average results. But when we started to dig in, and what the leaders told me when I got here is like, Mark, like we're spending like all this time in all these different tools trying to figure out just what to do. And what that leads to is it leads to people thinking in different ways. And when people think in different ways, it leads to branching workflows. And the next thing you know is you have multiple reps that should be doing the same job, but are doing it all slightly differently. And now when we go to put a fix in, a lot of the times that fix doesn't have the impact that we need. And so we lose control of the business, which is, as our job is of leaders, is not to just know our business, is to control it. So additionally, like all their attention kind of got spread across. Like some people were LinkedIn experts, some people were Zoom info experts, some people are outreach experts, some people were experts with AI. And like we needed to create like a way for someone to level up in the right way in all of those. So what we did is, if you go to the next slide, is we decided that we needed to eliminate manual prospecting as much as we could. And my current VP of Biz Dev, his name is Jonathan Mayer. He is an unbelievably intelligent, long-time BD executive. And the way that he phrases it, I really, really love, is he said there's 5 key decisions that a BDR or SDR makes. Decision 1 is, can I pick the right account? Decision 2 is, can I pick the right persona in that account to approach? 3 is, can I pick the right messaging to appeal to that persona? The 4th is, can I pick the right cadence or the series of steps over time that I want that message to be broadcast out with? And 4 is, can I pick the right CTA? Is what is the offer, the thing that's going to cause them to respond? If you have a BDR that's really good at all 5 of those decisions, you'll get really good performance. But most BDRs struggle to make all those 5 decisions well consistently. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to automate that delivery of some of those decisions using first and third party intent signals so that we could drive more qualified pipeline per rep faster and really make sure that we were fueling our AEs pipelines, because we have great AEs here with higher quality deals at a higher volume. So let's look a little bit about how that kind of orchestration of these different decisions comes into play. So what we've done is we've relieved reps of 3 of the decisions. They no longer pick the account. They no longer pick the persona, and they no longer pick the messaging. Actually, they no longer pick the cadence or the CTA, but we give them a little bit of control over that. And what I mean by that is we have data and signals that's coming from our CRM, first party signals that we own about lost opportunities, prior conversations, third party signals like job postings or champions that are moving between companies. We have AI research that we're doing and injecting into the CRM for reps to have. And then we obviously have all of our account and contact data. When we have those 3 things together, that gives us kind of our data and signals package. We need to move that over into an AI brain that can look at that. Now, why do you need an AI brain? It's pretty simple. I think in the last decade, from when I started doing all the outbound work that resulted in Outreach's success, I was the first employee there. I led sales to $250 million. It was just me and the 4 co-founders to start. I built every process. A lot of the product was built on the processes that I was installing. And what happened is we took all those learnings and we kind of started to decide, all right, in the beginning, it just wasn't that much stuff. You didn't need to keep track of so many things. You really just needed to be disciplined and have good A/B testing. And if you did that, you could typically drive results as long as your reps were doing the tasks they were assigned. As we've gone over the last 10 years, we've become so much more sophisticated with what we need to do to get results that I don't think the human brain is capable of triangulating. That's not even the right word. I don't know what a 100-sided geometric figure is, but whatever that is, centrosizing, I don't know. But they have to take all these things and use it to point to an action that should happen. It's too many variables for the human mind to comprehend, weight, score, figure out, keep track of, be aware of, factor in. And because of that, that's where we decided to put in an AI brain to relieve our reps from the responsibility of doing something that's impossible, which just creates further frustration. And when you're in the role of BDR, it's not a hard job. It's just a job filled with a lot of rejection. And rejection is one of those straws on the camel's back, along with, oh my gosh, it's so complicated and there's so many things to keep track of, that just causes people to be demoralized and not be successful. So we wanted to make it a little more simple. So the AI brain does that. It looks at all of the information about an account that we have, the types of contacts, how many do we have, how often we've talked to them, have they been in opportunities before, what is the content of some of those conversations, all of that internal signal, and then the external stuff, who's looking for this, who has business initiatives that they've announced around that, who's been on our website, all of that kind of stuff. It all gets put into UserGems, our outbound brain, and it gets weighted and scored. And we end up with like an idea of how interested that person is in a conversation. In other words, how convertible they are. And, our job is to convert cold people into warm conversations and then into qualified pipeline. So understanding the temperature of folks before you reach out is really good. So we now have all of that, and then we can automatically build a list, and then we pull that prioritized list into Outreach, and then Outreach has sequences that UserGems then fills with all of the content that we need, so the reps don't have to figure out the messaging or how to combine stuff. We have like simple rules, like we call it signal stacking. So in order to get to a level where you're automatically put into a sequence for a rep, you have to have a high score. That score only happens when you stack together a small amount of very high intent signals or a lot of low intent signals, or a combination of those. Once it gets to that level, it gets put into the sequence. So let's say that you end up with a lot of signals. Well, we have rules, for example, that say you can only use 2 of those signals in a message. So we're not trying to create like this 37-point message of all the reasons that we should have reached out in that first email. A sequence, a lot of people have forgotten this and don't understand this correctly, which is um, the sequence is designed to mimic what an ad does. And ads, the way they work is they work with a certain amount of frequency over a short time period in order to get a person to feel familiar with something. If I see Nike swooshes around all the time, I become familiar with it. If somebody wanted to sell me Nike, subconsciously, I am more open to talking to them because I'm familiar with the swooshes, versus if I've never seen a swoosh before, my lizard brain kicks in, my fight or flight instinct activates, and I have to decide within 3 to 7 seconds biologically whether I want to be attracted to or repelled away from this thing. And that's a very difficult situation to put buyers into when we as sellers don't want to do that. So that's where we create those signals. We then use the signals in the messaging that is built, the list is built on all that to do that. And then, we use our sequencer outreach to send out the messages, our dialer to do the phone calls, and a couple other things to make sure that reps stay on track. So if you go to the next slide, here's 6 signals we use right now. Now, again, I wouldn't say any of this is crazy. I wouldn't say this is groundbreaking. I'd say what it is, though, is super consistent and stacked and weighted and scored. We do not do a job change play. We do not do a website visitor play. We use those as signals to understand that when working together, someone is more likely, therefore higher scored, to go after. And then we use those signals in the messaging in a combined way. If you see a job change and somebody on the website, you can write a much more convincing message than just the job change that you hammer them with over several emails and cold calls. When you create this stacked approach, you have multiple areas of conversation, and you can find the one that is most likely to help them convert by just staying consistent, doing the messaging, and making sure that you use the signals. Job changes are, obviously an old hat way of doing it. Website visitors, a little bit newer, not that great. Event engagement is one that we're really proud of. Like, we can see who's come to events. That's a higher weighted signal that gives us a lot of intent. We use closed loss revival, something that back in the day was always the best practice, but hard to enforce. Now we have like complete enforcement and 100% stuff. We can see if we're trying to rip out a competitor, what kind of signals do we need to look for that? And then again, all of that's put together into this account scoring that helps us understand on several signals inside of that whether someone is a good target or not. But I think what's this slide is most about is not the specific signals on the slide. It shows that we have done research and understand which signals activate for us a higher level of conversion. And so, some of these might be similar to yours, but you have to start to understand your business enough and experiment to find the right ones. And, unfortunately, outbound is like your grass in the summer. If you don't mow it for a couple of weeks, it gets really hard to mow on the 3rd week. You have to stay on top of this stuff, or it starts to get really hard to make it successful. We have constant measurements in place, a lot of early warning detection signals in place that tell us when a signal isn't starting to convert the way that it used to, so we can add in more. And my team is also tasked with adding in 1 to 2 signals every 4 weeks into the brain that we can test and understand should they be there as part of the permanent solution or not. So really cool, but what has this resulted in? So we now have 56% of all of our outbound activity is driven by our outbound brain in UserGems. Nobody does anything anymore except for go to the sequence that's already queued up with the right person, with the right messaging for the right persona in the right account, and with the right CTA that's been tested. all of that stuff is right there. They just need to take a second, be the human in the loop, and make sure that there's nothing off. But 56% of all of our SDR or BDR activity is driven through that. We have over 14,500 people in sequence that is as far as the end of February that are going through this process. And we've reached as many as 80 qualified meetings set in a month just off of this process. And now we have other processes running. We have other inbound things happening. That is an amazingly impactful result on my pipe gen that puts my sales team in a much better position to make sure that they're closing high quality deals. Additionally, if you were to go back and listen to our earnings calls, you'll find out, for example, that also our win rates are up, our cycle time is down, and we're doing a really good job on ACV as well. So, this hasn't resulted in smaller deals, worse performing deals. This isn't noise. This is, forgive the pun, signal. And what we do is we keep doubling down on the signal. So let's look at some of the charts so you can see over time what's happened. We switched to this sometime in November, December-ish. I can't remember the exact date that we turned it on. And you can see what happened is the gray lines show the relative amount of overall activity. It's like, hey, it doesn't matter what the numbers is. It's like, this is the full amount. And then you can see the percentage of our sequences that are now sourced through this process. UserGems was, I would say, a tool for us before we leveraged it in a strategic fashion like this. Is now much more than a tool. It is something that would be almost impossible for us to pull out now. It's so integral to our success. And you can see again, over 50% of all sequences are queued up like this and how that's grown over time. Now, if you look at the number of sequences started, you can see not only have the percentage of sequences gone up, but the number of sequences that we activate has gone up. That's like stacking good on good. It's like 1 + 1 = 3. We got more going out, and they're providing more information for us so that we could do the increased volume. And then if you go to the next slide, this is the most beautiful part, is the pipeline has also gone up. We haven't sacrificed conversion or quality with the increase of activity. And as many BDR and SDR leaders know, that is a tricky trick to get figured out. Lots of times increased activity leads to decreased overall efficiency. We are seeing increased efficiency because we're going after the right accounts and getting a lot of the decisions that we're wasting time and all of the tool sprawl and everything off of our reps' plate as much as we can. Now, obviously, we don't have enough accounts and enough people that are giving us 100% of our activity signals to hit our number, but we can put in other strategic places to fill in the gap. This just takes over half of it, and it's growing all the time off of our plate of having to figure out. So just to recap on the next slide here, we went from about 3 hours of account researching a day almost. I wouldn't say, maybe I can't remember the 3 hours is a week or a day. People sourcing contacts in Lusha or Zoom Info, writing emails, putting people into sequences. 60% of their week was spent on non-selling stuff. Now, because we have signals that are prioritizing accounts, contacts auto-enriching with all the data that they need, the AI writing the first draft of the personalized emails, and then also prospects being put into the right sequences. 80% of our rep time in a recent time study is spent on the top 20% of our highest converting accounts. So unbelievable. And Amanda, I see your comment about Titanx. We have used Titanx in the past, and they dramatically increased our call connect rates. We ended up getting most of the numbers that we need. So we're not currently a customer, but they were instrumental to helping us get on the right path. So what are the results of this? A little bit more. We went from sub 2% reply rates to 11 to 16% reply rates in GEM-E sequences, depending on which play we're running. We've generated well over 100 opportunities in the last 6 months. It only took us 4 days to generate our first opportunity, not meeting, opportunity, once we turn this on. And then a really cool thing for us, since we're a very international business, we were founded in Italy. We still have a lot of our teams are in Italy and other parts of Europe. When we launched Gemi's translation ability and started to do regionally specific language emails, our reply rates in 2 weeks went 30x. So that's unbelievably cool stuff from literally quite literally zero effort from our side. Just, hey, yeah, let's do that. So a couple like benefits to wrap up is when reps focus on the warmest contacts and they spend most of their time there, you greatly increase your ability to convert and to get really great pipeline in the door. And that has a cascading effect through your AE's performance, your onboarders performance, CS performance. That's got a long tail of benefits. When we combine signals, instead of trying to look to run individual plays for a specific signal, when we combine signals and then run a really great outbound motion with a great CTA and awesome messaging, you get way better scoring and way better results. AI messaging, I actually had a failed startup that was trying to do this. Gemi beat me to the punch, I guess. Is if you do messaging right, that's one of the things I love about UserGems. I've always trusted them. The way that they, having come my startup being in the data space, I learned it a lot. The way that they do their champion trapping, for example, is just different than everybody else. It's just better. And not to be a brown nose or anything because I'm on their webinar, but like I trust them to build better products than everybody else. And they were building a better product than my startup. So I quit using them. I quit my startup and went back to being an operator instead of an entrepreneur. And their messaging converts. AI messaging works when it's sent to the right people in the right way with the right brains behind it. And lastly is like, listen, no rep wants to sit there and research. I mean, maybe they do so they can avoid a cold call, but that's not productive behavior and not going to help them make more money. We have tools now that can do all of that kind of stuff. Let's just go ahead and do it for them. Let's relieve them of some of the decisions that they need to make on their journey to figuring out how to get the right people into the calendars of our AEs. But listen, when you combine all this stuff together, you get amazing results. And I think that we are well on our way to some of the best results we've ever had in company history. And thank you.
Perfect. Thank you ever so much, Mark. That was so great to hear everything from you. We've had a few questions that have come through in the Q&A. So like I said, we're going to get to those at the end. Right now, I'm going to welcome Kevin onto the stage. We're going to do a little switcheroo. We'll be back for the Q&A at the end. So if you do have any remaining questions, please just put Mark just beforehand. So we're making sure we're sending them to the right people. But thank you again, Mark, and we'll see you very shortly. Here we go.
Thank you guys very much for joining me for a couple moments of your Thursday. I'm going to share my slides here. Excited to be speaking today about Datadog's ABM program. And in general, I think, if there's one main takeaway that I can leave you with, it's to stop optimizing for warm accounts and start optimizing for meetings. And I think, I won't speak for Mark, but I think we're sort of coming at this same problem from two different angles, one on the marketing side and one on the sales side. But ultimately, I don't think deals get done without meetings. And I think it's kind of like pizza. I don't think there's any such thing as a bad meeting or bad pizza. Even meetings that are unproductive, that don't give us a lot of information about an account, ultimately do, by their nature, kind of give you more information than you had before. And disqualifying out of deals, I think, is one of the most important skills that we can help enable through marketing. And ultimately that saves rep time and gets them back to being productive. So, I think salespeople in general are pretty smart. Like if you get meetings, the pipe will take care of itself. Because they will be able to either use meetings to disqualify out or qualify in. So with that said, let's talk about how Datadog's ABM program actually helps to make that happen. I think, again, the problem that we're attacking here is most ABM teams stopping at accounts. We've sent some display ads, we've warmed up the account, we've done some some advertising, and we've done a little bit of send over some cadences to the SDRs. I think we're done, right? That's the end of marketing's responsibility. I really think that ABM needs to go that extra step further and say, okay, how can we start to both identify the right folks for SDRs, for AEs to be reaching out to and trying to book those meetings, but also what can we do on the inbound and the outbound side to automate, to improve, to bring intelligence and data to that process. And that's really what I think I've tried to bring to Datadog. And the results are not quite as robust as Mark's in terms of the depth of data analysis, but anecdotally, we run these PG days, right? Pipeline generation days with our SDRs, where we provide them with the context, the messaging, and they go out and call. And ultimately, what we found was that we were breaking the quotas, the monthly meeting quotas for our SDRs by doing this, because they were booking so many meetings using this system that they actually had to adjust the quotas to handle this. So hopefully that's a good sign. I love making RevOps life harder if they have to go and redo quotas in the middle of the year because we're too successful. That's a nice problem to have. But the way that this actually happens in practice is obviously we work very closely with our RevOps team. We map the accounts, we look at signals, we look at all of the ICP data. And this changes quarterly, right? Because new products come out, the market changes, et cetera. How do we then go and figure out what it is that we should be doing to provide folks with these contacts and start to target them? And ultimately, that looks like a big set of data from a couple of different places, pumping that through AI, and then having that enable our outbound and our inbound machine. So first of all, I'll talk about how do we actually set that up in practice. There's a lot of logos on this slide. I have kind of cobbled this together myself, which is, duct taped, which is probably not the best way of going about this. I think there's a lot of tools out there that can synchronize a lot of this process. But, in the absence of that, what I would say is wherever you are on your journey towards signal-based selling, signal-based marketing, it's possible to start very small, right? I think so. You don't necessarily need everything on this slide. You don't need anything on this slide, really, to be able to start this process. And ultimately, I think, it starts to make sense to invest when you start to see those results. So, but nonetheless, what we do is we drag in a lot of our first-party data. I'm blessed with a really good team of data engineers who kind of oversee our Snowflake instance and help us kind of pull out application data, telemetry data, user data, and combine that with a bunch of second and third party data around website traffic, job changers, microsite visitors and engagement, that type of stuff as well. And ultimately, we try and bring all of that data together in addition to meeting notes, op notes, contact history, and synthesize that in a way where we can start to match it to our unique value props and help automate the process of outbound for the SDR, specifically emails. And what we've seen again is like the efficiency of the SDR team, much like Mark is seeing, is benefited by this because they no longer have to do the research, and they're not spending time identifying new people to reach out to because we're providing a lot of that to them already. So, one of the ways that we're doing this on the inbound side, though, is through actioning it with surround sound campaigns. And I've stolen that word from someone, I can't even remember who, but I do think that you need the combination of advertising, direct mail, maybe events as well, and then also outbound, emails and phone calls, because certain people are only going to be reached in certain places. And one of the most important things, I think, on that note, is reaching folks on B2C channels, right? Reaching them off of LinkedIn. My ICP is not sales and marketing. They're not spending all day on LinkedIn. They don't live there, right? So a lot of times it's very difficult to reach them through just using a LinkedIn strategy alone. And that's where I think advertising on Meta, various platforms, on Reddit, using Google, those are all really important things to kind of get that surround sound approach really tuned up. So this is what our outbound intelligence system that I've cobbled together in Google Sheets actually looks like, right? We develop through all of our data sources the top 15 for the 500 accounts that we run on average in a sprint for ABM, the top 15 people that they should be reaching, that SDRs and AEs should be reaching out to at any one time. Okay. And what that looks like is it's a real simple brief, couple of bullet points on news that they need to know based on the latest that we've seen, crunched with AI, and then it's the actual individuals, why they're in the patch, and how to reach out to them. And what we built was a custom AI system. I'm sure that pales in comparison to Gemmy, but it's doing okay, in a custom gem with a bunch of information and data about the account, and the types of signals that we're seeing and notifying folks of on our SDR and our AE teams to help them automate the process of building those cadences out. And so that has in and of itself improved our efficiency on activity by 25% for folks in the AB or accounts in the ABM account patch versus our kind of normal motion. So really excited about that on the outbound side. But I think a lot of marketing also too is on the inbound side, right? And that's where I think person level ads, person level ad audiences on Meta, on Google, on Reddit are super important. As I mentioned before, you do need a tool to do this. I personally am partial to Vector, but there's a lot of different options for you if you would like to start doing B2B targeting on more traditional B2C channels. But also, I think microsites become a really important play as well, especially with the way that AI allows us to scale. We do almost all of our LinkedIn strategy is driving towards microsites. And these are hyper-personalized for the individual accounts. They're calling out things that we know about them, again, from the system data pulls. And what we've seen is that the engagement on these is deeper than what we're seeing on sort of sending them to generic landing pages. The caveat to that is this is not surface level personalization. This is not just calling out an account name or putting a logo on a page and saying, oh, they're ready to go, right? No, this is like everything on the page is written using a human in the loop AI system to just focus on the pain that's specific to that account. And ultimately, I think you have to go to that level of personalization to make microsites work. But nonetheless, that's kind of our approach to LinkedIn advertising. And then we have direct mail, right? Like direct mail, as it relates to ABM, I kind of look at it as you need a two-tier system, right? You need a play that's kind of volume-based, demos for gift cards, focusing on the users, focusing on those meetings that are going to help develop account hypotheses. And then once you get that, you kind of need a bespoke touch to break through the noise to get to that VP, to get to that C-suite level if you're selling into the enterprise with a large account like that. And that's, where I think, personally, we use a company called Wildcard to help us with that. But really, it's about researching the individual, seeing if there's information out there about their, in their digital footprint about things that they care about personally, professionally, whatever, words that they use a lot. Is there any way to spin that and make it into a direct mail gift that can really be impactful in, hitting these really hard to reach folks? So I really think direct mail is a huge part of of ABM and kind of the success that we've had. And I'm a big fan of this kind of tiered approach to direct mail as well. Lastly, I want to talk about signals because again, I kind of glossed over this, but the way that we've built the system is all based on signals. And specifically, I think that, my goal recently has been to focus on signal alpha. The one thing I'll say is that if you pay attention to LinkedIn, a lot of folks are saying certain signals have been commoditized. You can no longer use this type of signal. It's so overwhelmed that it's irrelevant. I wanted to test this theory, and so I asked a new joiner on my team who was new to the ABM function to forward me any email that she got that referenced her job changer. I think Datadog is a pretty large account. I would expect a lot of technology companies, a lot of services companies in the B2B space would be targeting us. She only got 3 emails that referenced her job change. So I don't know that every signal is as commoditized as you might think it is based on LinkedIn thought leaders, right? So I really want to focus on like just using all of the signals that are available to us because they all help us regardless of how commoditized they are. With that said, finding signal alpha, individual signals that only you can attack that will create these really impressive cadences and approaches to an account, I think is crucial. And somebody I follow, and obviously the Signal Alpha concept I stole from Brendan Short, who's a really good thought leader in the sales and marketing space, is this idea of like the signal-based market, anybody who's hot at this point in time, and then how do you figure out how to get that alpha? And that alpha is like niche signals that only you care about, only you can find a way in. And for us, that's outages, right? Outages or service degradations of digital properties of our prospects. And we scrape Reddit and Down Detector and a bunch of other places to get this information in. And ultimately what we see is that when you have outages that are, not caught early and are, unfortunately detrimental to user experience, oftentimes it really develops the need for the tool that we sell. And so wouldn't recommend ambulance chasing, right? Like you want to wait until they do the postmortem and all that type of stuff, but it can be a helpful signal to reach out to. There's some other examples there that I won't go through, but really you need to think about the uniqueness of your product, of your approach to go to market, of your business, and how you can start to adapt signals that you can find, especially with AI, because a lot of times these are really going to be bespoke programs to figure out how to get those unique approaches and develop them into account hypotheses and ultimately outbound approaches. So anyway, to wrap up, okay, I think a couple things that are really important. Optimize for meetings in your programs. That's what I've seen to be successful. That's what I've seen to drive relationships with reps, and not focusing too much on warm accounts, focusing more on the people inside of those accounts where you can, rather than just the accounts themselves, and mapping those signals to translate into intent and ultimately have that help you refine how you get those people forward into your ad campaigns and into your outbound sequences. And then lastly, finding that signal alpha, and with all of that, focusing on surround sounding with ABM. So that's pretty much it from me. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to hopefully taking some questions and talking more with Martha and Mark.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much. Let me just double check this part. Here we go. We've got to get Mark on stage as well. Amazing. Thank you, Kevin. This has been so interesting seeing these two very different approaches, and I'm really keen to get into the questions because we've had quite a few come in throughout the session. Let's get started because we've got a few more probably that are due to come in. So please do keep your questions coming in if you do have any more. Kevin, you obviously built from scratch. Mark, you've obviously used UserGems to kind of shortcut that infrastructure. Firstly, I'd really like to know, what do you see as the kind of real trade-offs between building versus buying your GTM brain? I'd love to hear from you on that.
You want to start with me?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I mean, the most obvious trade-off is trying to cobble together Google Sheets formulas, and I have on multiple occasions put too many contacts. So I have more than 10 million cells in Google Sheets, and have had to create new sheets to handle all of the new stuff. So the obvious trade-offs are technology that's not purpose-built for what we're trying to do here is you have to duct tape things together. Things break. Things require manual updating. I think it's difficult. I mean, regardless of what tool you use, I think you do have to get that signal alpha is oftentimes very difficult to bake into an actual platform. You might have to go build that yourself, but certainly the scalability and the automation, those are things that you can't do with a couple of AI prompts and some vibe coding. So that is definitely the trade-off.
Yeah, the way that I look at it is right now in my org, there's 3 levels of AI tools. There's the ones you vibe code for yourself because you want to do your job better and you're having fun. And I do that all the freaking time. I think I have Claude. I've built an app for myself called Claudette. I have Claudio. I have Claudia. They all do specific things and I talk to them like they're people and they do their thing, right? And those are just for me. And those don't need to go to anybody else and I can use them as myself. Then there's ones that matriculate up. They're so powerful and so good that we need to standardize them. And so they become what we would call a suggested or recommended tool, not required. This is one that we have vetted. We know it uses the right data sources. We know the output is going to be consistent and we recommend that you use it, but you don't have to if you have a better way of doing it. And then there's required, which we call workflow tools. Our workflow is a standardized way that we expect our reps to operate. If they don't use the tools inside their workflow, then they don't work here, quite honestly. Like it's that ingrained and that can be BDR, that can be CSM, that could be an SC. It's how we do our job. And if you don't do the job the way that we want you to, then we need to figure out what's going on. Now, if you have a better way, we're happy to listen and change, but you don't just do things your way when it comes to your standard job workflow, because if you do, you create inconsistent data, and you also don't allow us to help you with standardized coaching and processes because you're outside that universe. So that's how we do. System tools, system level tools that drive the metrics that go on the slides of your board meeting are not something that you want to build. Why do I know this? Does everybody remember back in the day when everybody tried to build their own CRM because they didn't really need Salesforce? And how many of those projects are still ongoing? 0. So I would say like this is the next generation of that. We can do things a lot trickier, a lot cooler. The stuff I've vibe coded for myself, I literally can't believe I can do, and it seems like magic, but it is not an infrastructure thing. I can go out and I can cut a walkway into my garden, and it can be really nice. I'm not building the interstate though, that a bunch of cars run off of. And so that to me is the build versus buy. If you're just building a garden path to make your job a little easier and more fun and more beautiful, go for it. But if I'm putting something in place to drive my business, it's going to be hardened by people that are experts and that are responsible for making sure that it stays on track and does what it's supposed to do and innovate on it.
Okay, brilliant. This is super helpful. Okay, I've got another quick one here, which is on AI and writing in terms of messaging, obviously with Jemmy as well. Gillian also asked a question that's kind of related to this. Mark, I know that you now get 11 to 16% reply rates with that AI agent Jemmy. And Kevin, you're also using AI to write these outbound cadences. For both of you, what would you say separates AI messaging that works from AI messaging that kind of feels like slop? And within that as well, Gillian's saying, is it better to go in with kind of a bigger introduction, or is it better to be kind of short and sweet? What's your recommendations there?
I don't know if I have an answer for this. I think that messaging is, again, I tried a startup that did this. I signed up dozens and dozens and dozens of people. We were closing in on $1 million of ARR. And I just felt like this isn't what I'm not doing this in a way that's going to actually help people, or like it's going to get steamrolled. And what I found in talking to dozens and dozens of people about their messaging is there's kind of two sides of the coin, but people only ever look at one. And that's what is my personal preference and how I think this message is going to do. There's no way that any company can build messaging that appeals to everybody's preferences, because everybody's different. And you also know when you're critiquing something, even though you might, if you'd have wrote it the same exact way, if it's not yours and it comes to you, you're still going to critique the shit out of it and be like, oh, I should do this. So I don't know what the answer is. The other side of the coin that people don't look at is, you know what, Matt, doesn't matter what you think about the messaging. You know what does matter? What the buyer thinks about the messaging. And you don't get that response until you actually send it. So if you spend so much time working on what to send and never sending it, you're actually never going to get the data that tells you what you should send. It's like a horrible cycle that most people get totally locked up in, and one that I think I'm an outbound expert. Like I helped build outreach to $250 million in 8 years. I signed up 6,000 customers. I got to talk to the greatest GTM minds on the planet. And still in all that, I still couldn't build a product that made messaging appeal to enough people to make it sellable. So to me, it's much, much more about the infrastructure, the signals you're watching, the way that you're combining and stacking all that to give the prescriptive actions to your reps than it is about what the actual email says. Because let's get real. How many emails do you think I read from salespeople a day? Actually, I read most of them because I'm looking at them for cool stuff that I want to steal. But like, that's an intellectual exercise for me. But most people are just not even reading them. And so like, that's the problem. That's why my startup failed. Is we were, I think, writing really, really great messaging, but the email channel is just a channel. And you have to have a multi-channeled, multi-pronged approach in order to get in front of people. And I think evidence that you're doing a good job is a high reply rate, but I would say high reply rates in and of themselves are not as valuable as most people think.
Yeah, wow, it's gonna be tough to.
This is my area, man. This is my area, Kevin.
I mean, I'll touch on just like the AI part, right? And that is, ultimately, I think what Mark said, right? Like you optimize towards the cadences that book meetings, regardless of how they sound to you, because the buyer ultimately is the one who makes the decision. Long versus short. I mean, I personally, I lean really, really short. You know, we don't recommend cadences to our SDRs that are more than 300 characters long. It just is. I think scannability is super important. That's been my experience when I've looked at the data of outbound. But obviously that's going to depend on your market, right? The one thing on AI, I think, is having built it from scratch using frontier models rather than using an off-the-shelf kind of software AI combo, is you need to test edge cases often and make sure that your context windows or documents or whatever are actually usable. So like, you can't just throw a bajillion documents at an AI system and say, okay, I'd like to, you know, you now become the brain. Like, you have to synthesize certain parts of it so that the system doesn't just kind of give up in the middle of it and deliver something that's half baked. So making sure that your context is really, really relevant, that you put into the system. And then ultimately you have to test thousands and thousands of outputs, like constantly running and tweaking your prompts every single time to try and build in those fallbacks, try and build in those guardrails, if you're using off-the-shelf frontier models, to make sure that it's kind of abiding by whatever rules you or guardrails you want to set. So that's my advice on AI.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. Now I'm going to jump over to our most upvoted question of today from Matt. Maybe this is more directed at Mark, but Kevin, feel free to chime in if you can, because this is about 6 Sense and 6QA approach. So how do we feel this UserGems AI brain approach compares to something like 6 Sense, 6QA approach? Mark, would you like to go first?
Listen, I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but I believe I understand how 6 Sense works, or how it used to work, the way that it used to work, and the way that they sold the premise on which they sold everything, which was unstated, was, you know, when you go to fix your washing machine and you get to that site and like you do the Google search, fix my washing machine instructions, and you get this site and it's like 17 steps and each step is like 2 sentences, and there's no person on the planet that could fix any part of their washing machine with that advice. Well, guess what? That's part of a content network. That content network is measuring your IP address to see if you go to it. 6 Sense was buying that data in order to see, oh, Mark must be on the market to buy more washing machines because he went to a washing machine fix-it shop. So if you just happen to go to a forecasting thing and you clicked on it and Clary was a customer of 6 Sense, Clary would then see that as a signal that you're interested in forecasting, when maybe you have zero buying intent around forecasting. Maybe you're just curious. Maybe you just typed in forecasting when you meant to type in for something else. I don't know. So listen, I think all of that means that it was a good idea. I don't know if it was if it was executed correctly and ever really drove a bunch of value, but sure was a great story. This is completely different. This is stacking together multiple signals that, as Kevin talked about earlier, because your business, that like a job change of this is meaningful to you. That them announcing that they're doing a compliance thing is meaningful for you. That like this champion coming into their org is meaningful to you. You don't know if me clicking on a forecasting website is meaningful to you or not. And so that's what this is. It's much more meaning, and therefore more highly weighted. And then when you start to stack it, you get a full picture versus just working off one isolated signal whose meaning is a little bit dubious at best. That's what a 6QA is. Dubious intent.
Kevin, what are your thoughts?
I really do think that modular approaches are winning out in the marketplace, right? Like that's what I've seen, I think, from the UserGems perspective, like focusing on these different signals and actually being able to identify them rather than just saying, hey, this is the account, go get it. That a lot of the kind of legacy ABM plays have kind of focused on is truly what's going to be the future of how we think about identifying accounts and scoring them and putting them into the hands of reps or marketers or whoever. So yeah, completely agreed.
Okay, wonderful. And we'll just finish up with the final question, because I know we're almost at time. We've all talked a lot about kind of what's working. I'm curious to go in the other direction. Before finding this current system that you have in place, what did you both previously try that completely flopped? AKA, what would you like to tell someone not to waste their time on?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think the thing that won't work is the disease of more. And thinking that if you just do more phone calls, if you just send more emails, if you just engage more accounts, I think that's a little bit kind of old advice, but like I can't think of anything that's easier to do, especially as a leader, than to try to get to more. And a lot of times as humans, we want to adjust to easy, not effective. And so that's the first thing that pops in my mind. But that's a really good question. I kind of want to like think about it for a couple of days and figure out what the real answer is. But that's the one I can come up with on the spot.
No, perfect. How about you, Kevin?
I think we've talked a lot about the sort of customization and personalization of outbound. I think on the advertising side, because again, I'm the marketing guy in the room, just kind of running your normal advertising play, display advertising, LinkedIn content advertising that has no relevance to buyers, dealing with large audiences, these types of things. I think, in my experience, that's just dead. Like the competition is too high, the noise, especially on LinkedIn. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen the research there, but like LinkedIn, 30% increase in marketing budgets going there with people moving away from certain elements of Google. Like I think you have to be as hyper targeted with your advertising campaigns as you are with outbound, as we've discussed today. So, just kind of doing the broad based ad campaigns, I think is dead. That's what I'm moving away from.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you all ever so much for joining today. It's been such a great session. I know I've definitely learned a lot. And it's been so great to have both Kevin and Mark here to tell us all about their brains and everything that they've been doing. As promised, you may have spotted in the chat, I will be emailing you all tomorrow morning with a nice little roundup of everything that we've learned today, some tips, tricks to take away with, and also the recordings too. But thank you both to our speakers and to everyone who joined today. And we'll be live next month with our next session. So thank you ever so much for being our first guest for Brains of GTM, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you so much.